Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com.
But I had that desire to do something for my country and to make it a better place. And I felt that if you are going to complain about what other people are doing and you're not going to do anything about it, then you should not complain. And then St. Lucia is one of the most wonderful places to live in the world. I can tell you, our people, while we have the pitons and we have beautiful beaches and we have hiking trails and we have nice sailing down to the Grenadines, you have all of these things. What we get the greatest compliments for in St. Lucia is the friendliness and the genuineness of our people.
Welcome to the Global Indian Podcast, home to the greatest conversations and the official platform for people of Indian origin. Yes, we are everywhere. Now, welcome back to your weekly podcast where we plunge into the human experience of being a person of Indian origin, take a second look at the countries we now call home, and tackle the big conversations we need to have. Now, we have been right the way across the globe in this series, over 40 countries, meeting with every single echelon of society. In this episode, I take a trip to the honeymoon destination of the world. No, it's not Birmingham in the UK, I can assure you. It is obviously St. Lucia in the Caribbean. Now, many people won't know, but this destination is much more than just sun, sea and sand. It is a paradise in itself with the whole changes taking place there. It is also a melting pot where you have this tremendous community of people of Indian origin who call the country home. They've been there since indentureship, and now they are also moving forward in the political circles. Our next guest is a signpost to that. It is Guy Joseph. Guy Joseph's CV reads more like an encyclopedia of success. He is the Minister of Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport and Civil Aviation. Now, at a time of COVID, you can imagine just how much pressure this gentleman is under. Yet, despite going through hurricanes, despite the whole COVID pandemic, not only has he been able to manage his portfolio incredibly successfully, but he's also been able to help his community as well as that of average St. Lucian across the nation to be able to achieve more. And what's really fascinating is that you'll find out here, he is one of the most humblest guys you will ever meet. He is incredible. This conversation has a look at a few different themes. One, the human experience of being him. Where he grew up in St. Lucia and what Indianness means to him. It also has a look at politics and about the social custodianship that our community look towards when they enter into these fields. And we also take another look into terms of St. Lucia and where it's currently heading. It is a remarkable conversation that I know you are going to love. As always, I'd like to say a massive thank you to all our supporters and sponsors out there, many of which you'll hear from soon. And if you too would like to participate in the global Indian journey, well, hey, it couldn't be easier. Simply go to our website, which is www.globalindianseries.com, where you can see the entire repertoire of conversations so far. I hope you enjoy this session.
Hi, my name is Divya and I'm co-founder of the Global Indian Podcast. Before you get to today's show, I've got a quick favour to ask. If you've been enjoying our conversations, I'd love if you could take just 1 minute to leave us a review on the platform that you're listening to us on and share our work to friends and family. It helps us out a lot. Word of mouth is the primary way that we grow. Thanks for your continued support.
Hello. My name is Daniel Trassa, and I'm Dean of Nova School of Business and Economics in Carcavelos, Portugal, one of Europe's leading business schools. I'm proud to be of Indian origin, and I invite you to discover these podcasts, which will look to redefine the impact that Indians and their descendants are doing all over the world. In behalf of Nova School of Business and Economics, I wish you a great 2021.
My name is Chitra Stern, and I am a proud Global Indian Ambassador and CEO of Martinal Resorts and Martinal Residences. We pride ourselves on the journeys that define a community, and our developments bring people together. Did you know that over 70,000 people just like us call Portugal home? The Global Indian Journey has brought people together in a meaningful way, and on behalf of all of us at Martinal, we want to thank you for joining us in these remarkable conversations. We look forward to seeing you here in Lisbon post-COVID. Have a great day.
And just move. Get up 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 and just.
It's an honor to have you on. But before I fully introduce you, just so the audience knows, we talk about this notion of global Indianness that sits away from waving the flag of India, but also saying actually we can be proud as an identity in the countries that we now call home. St. Lucia, I guess for most, is not known on the map, but extraordinarily, it's this beautiful island that not only has a rich history between the British and the French, but also started off with a small community of over 500 people that came via indentureship. From there, many centuries ago, it has now led to this incredible developments. And who better to take on this notion of Indianness than not just a custodian of the Indian community in St. Lucia, but also equally somebody who's made up the upper echelons of politics, who's now a minister for economic development, has represented his nation of St. Lucia on the biggest platforms possible, but also, and equally importantly, is a proud person of Indian origin. So Guy, on that remarks, it is my privilege and pleasure rather to introduce you to the platform. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It's really a pleasure. When I was first introduced to you, I really felt that it would be a great privilege to be able to tell the story of St. Lucia, my story, and to be able to contribute in one way or the other to the advancement of what India has contributed to the world in general, our ancestors. It is always interesting to go back historically to see our origins and how things came about. So it is a discussion that I'm really looking forward to, especially from a small island nation of St. Lucia. We gained independence in 1979. We became a nation. So we are pretty much a very young nation. Also, just 238 square miles with a population of about 178,000 or thereabouts. So it's quite interesting with a very small percentage of Indians in St. Lucia.
Well, that small percentage has turned itself from a minority in one area into a great thriving powerhouse within the country that, unlike most other Caribbean countries, has got this beautiful mixture of collaboration. There is none of the skin identity politics that has taken place. But before we get into that, Guy, what's it like being you? Because you are almost at this incredible turning moment for St. Lucia's history, a very young nation, and you have got one of the most important portfolios pushing St. Lucia to around the globe. If anything showcases the beauty of the country, is the fact that people don't judge you as Indian or anything. They say you are a proud St. Lucia, taking the flag of this marvelous country with the pitons and mangoes falling in abundance. What's it like being you on your side of the world?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that being St. Lucian is wonderful. While I am of Indian origin, because a lot of people who meet me, they ask me, were you born in St. Lucia? Are you really St. Lucian? Because a lot of people would look at me and think, okay, maybe you're from Trinidad or Guyana or maybe from India or one of the other places. But I am always proud to say I'm 100% St. Lucian. But both my parents, mother and father, Indians, and the grandparents came straight from India, so as indentured servants into St. Lucia. So clearly, while I am 100% St. Lucian, I have always been interested in my roots back in India and where we originated from and how we got here. So for me, St. Lucia is home, and I would not trade that for anything, but I have had the desire to explore much more about my background and where we came from originally.
Tell us about your background. What were your origins into St. Lucia?
Well, in terms of the background, so I grew up in a small community that is called Forestierre, and it's in the hillside. It's just about a 10 minutes drive from the capital city, but it's only climbing. So it's about the highest elevation above sea level where you would find people residing. It's a dead end, so when you get there, the road, you have to go back the same way that you came, because from there, it's forest reserve all the way to the middle part of the country. And like I said, we are very small, so the widest point in St. Lucia is 14 miles. So at almost any point you are in St. Lucia, you are 7 miles away from the ocean. The Atlantic Ocean on the eastern side and the Caribbean Sea on the western side. So no matter where you are, you get the sea breeze in St. Lucia, because really and truly 14 miles is the widest point, and there are places that reduce to 2 miles in distance from the ocean. So that's the community that I grew up in. It was a community that when I spoke to my father, who has since passed, but my mother is still alive. She's 86. And they would give us the history of the community where I grew up, and I still live there today, and I don't intend on trading any other place to live than the community that I was born and I grew up in. What I found out is that everywhere the Indians owned property, it was close to a river. So I felt that water was a very important part of growing up, because when I grew up back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, there was very little pipe-borne water in the rural communities, very little electrification also. So I grew up in a very humble home, no running water, no electricity. We use dry wood to cook, and then coals on some occasions, charcoal. So basically, grew up from very humble beginnings, predominantly farming. My father was a carpenter by trade. My mother was basically a housewife. And I'm from a family of 10, so brothers and sisters. So pretty large family compared to what the families are today. So there are 6 brothers and 4 sisters. So that is the community in which I grew up. There is a school that was established in the community, and strangely enough, the 5 principals of the schools that I knew were all of Indian origin. In fact, they came in the names, and I guess persons who are in India would understand it better. So you had a series of educators that were called the Gajadas. Gajada was the surname. Now, you may find it slightly different in the English as to what it was in India, because a lot of the translation changed. So we had a number of them, and it was like a family heritage where from one to the other became the principal of the school, until it changed to another Indian family, and that was the Kodra family, who was principal of the school up to the time when I left primary school in the community. I attended school right in the community where I live in Forestierre.
How big was your community? How many families were there?
Presently, I would say the community has roughly about 1,000 persons, but back then, I don't think it was anything close to that. But what we found was that the school was very highly populated back then because there were not many schools in the area, and the neighboring community, which would be a good 2 to 3 miles walk from there, is a lot of students walk that distance to attend school from the neighboring community of Mac, and even students from Tiroche and Geno and other communities close to Forestierre attended school in that community because the Forestierre Methodist Combined School, as it was called, was a school established by the Methodist Church, and quite a bit of the property in the community was owned by the Methodist Church, because I think after a period of nationhood, a lot of the land which was owned by the Queen at the time was passed on to the Methodist Church, which has been one of the most influential organizations within the community of Forestierre.
What was your notion of Indianness then when you were growing up? Because you got this incredible small community. From what it sounds, it was almost not isolated, but it was quite a distance from anything else.
I grew up in a community that was predominantly Indian, so it was very easy. I did not feel any negative feelings about being in the community because the majority of persons that we interacted with were of Indian origin also. And then further, in fact, I was told the story by my father that when the first person of African descent came to live in the community, it was actually the council of the community had to meet and designate an area of land to be occupied by that family. And the family still occupies that property up to today as we speak. So it is quite interesting what would have happened. So being part of it and being surrounded by so many persons of Indian descent, and strangely enough, cricket still remains the number one sport in the community of Forestierre, where I grew up. In fact, I have a major tape ball tournament that I sponsor every Good Friday, and has been going on from 1995 to now. That was long before I came into politics. I started sponsoring that competition, and it has grown to be one of the largest community competitions on the island of St Lucia, with thousands of people turning out every Good Friday for that Bollarama. So quite interesting. So most of 90% of the Indians in the community played cricket.
Yeah. Then what was it like when you left the community?
In the very early days, you would get certain remarks that would be cast, but this is more not on the part of elders, but on the part of children. So,
Yeah.
so if you are of Indian origin, you would hear something like, most people would call you coolie as an Indian in St Lucia, and it's not derogatory. So it is not something that is taken as offensive by St Lucian Indians.
Wow, okay.
Or they would tell you coolie Calcutta or something, but just to sort of identify you as being different. But it is not something that we've been ever felt offended as such by. I think when I get to the politics side, I can touch a bit on that, as it pertains to me personally. But the community that I represent, which is the second largest constituency geographically and also population-wise, has been represented by more Indian parliamentary representatives than persons of African descent or any other descent. And that is the community that has had the most Indian representatives in the Parliament of St. Lucia. And it is not because the majority of the population is Indian. It's a very small minority that's of Indian origin, and that just tells you how well the communities have blended and integrated together, where people don't see you as Indian or as Negro, they see you as from the community and be in St. Lucia.
Which is how it should be, you know. Why do you think that's been the case? Because it seems St. Lucia's been able to do something that a lot of other Caribbean countries have suffered with in the past. In St. Lucia, there is, and it can't just be the sun, sea, and mangoes and coconuts. It's obviously there's something else that's happening there.
I think a lot of it has to do with the orientation and how our parents brought us up. To respect and regard everybody as equals, not to look down on any other person in any way. Our parents had very good value systems that even things they would do, they would not allow us to do. So if my father drank alcohol, I could not drink. And if you smoke, then you are not allowed to smoke because that's not for you. So we grew up with a very good value system. And I can proudly say that I don't feel that anywhere in St. Lucia we've ever had this issue of rivalry with persons of Indian descent or persons of African descent or people of European descent or those who are of the Carib descendants, which is still a bit prevalent in the community of Choiseul or the village of Choiseul. There are lots of persons. So they are the lighter skinned persons that we call Shabins in St. Lucia. If you trace the ancestors back, you would find quite a bit of it in relation to those of Carib descent. So I think St. Lucia has been a very good melting pot of all of these because remember, we were the country most fought over during the French and English battles because we were 7 times British and we were 7 times French. So you find most of the communities have a French name and an English name. So if I take a community like Canaries is the English name, but Kanawi would be the French name or the Patois name. And that is why we also speak, apart from English being the primary language, we have what we call the Patois or the Creole speaking. And most St. Lucians, 95% of St. Lucians speak the Creole very well. We celebrate Creole month in the month of October. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we could not have done it this year. So what happened is that I believe the combination of all of these things brought the country closer together, and people did not discriminate against anybody on the basis of their origin.
Well, what does Indianness mean to you, and how has it changed throughout your life? Because obviously you came from a very different world than where it is now, from cooking over coal because it's a necessity. Now it's more of a great way just to enjoy barbecue. So has the same way that the society shifted, has your notion of Indianness shifted as well?
I would not say it has shifted because I still love India. Indian food is one of my favorites. So whenever I travel, I find an Indian restaurant, wherever it is. I think we have Spice of India, a local restaurant, and Razmatas. These are 2 Indian restaurants. And I think Spice of India ranks among the top restaurants in St. Lucia as I speak today, because people in general love Indian food. We love the curry and we love the dals and the different things. Now, Trinidad has a much richer heritage of Indian food than we have in St. Lucia. But growing up, my parents would prepare the tal curry and the dal and all of the other the sags and the different dishes that were of Indian origin. I can do some curry myself. I would do a nice curry goat or curry chicken that I can prepare myself. So my sisters are very good at some of the Indian dishes, and we learn to cook quite a bit of the ordinary things that we grew on a day-to-day basis, which is part of the Indian heritage as far as food preparation is concerned. So we are very proud of this.
So then coming to where you are now, obviously you're in the political world and you're representing your nation as a person of Indian origin who's a very proud St. Lucian to the world. What's the general misconception people have about you then, or about St. Lucia, in your opinion?
I would not say there are major misconceptions, other than that when people see me, they don't think I'm 100% St. Lucian.
Yeah.
I get that a lot, that, well, I didn't think you were from St. Lucia. Are your parents both Indians? And then because of my surname, which is Joseph, then a lot people don't associate it with being Indian. And I must say that everywhere I've traveled in the world to represent St. Lucia, I have been very well received. I cannot criticize any place I have been, and I have been treated any lesser because I am of Indian origin. So I think my Indianness is a positive for me in life, in that this is where God placed me. This is the family that I was born into, and I am proud and happy to be of Indian origin. I don't think I would be the same person that I am today if I was not. I appreciate the value system that I grew up with, and the things that I was taught as a child growing up, to be industrious, to work hard. Generally speaking, that if you want to be successful, you have to work hard at it. And I think that this is the key to success.
I think it's fantastic. What was it like for you the moment that when politics came knocking your door, that you were able to represent your nation? Was that not only, I guess, for your community that was there where you were born, that would have been a massive triumph? I know we mentioned the phone call before that the first lady elected to Parliament in St. Lucia was a person of Indian origin. So obviously
Yes.
it was a path that was treaded before, but you represent a very youthful version of the community in St. Lucia. What was that moment like for you? What was that sense of pride for you there?
Well, the political arena is not somewhere that I wanted to be in originally. Strangely enough, life takes us some places that we don't necessarily plan on going or being there. I always loved politics in terms of my days growing up. And in those days, we had no television, so you had a small transistor radio, and then the parliament sittings were broadcast on radio. So I would listen because I was just fascinated by the debate and the manner in which the affairs of parliament was conducted. I was more into the private sector. After my first job as a supervisor, when I left Sir Lewis Community College, at the time it was the Mon Technical College, it had not been renamed. My first job was as a supervisor, and after about a year of work, I realized I could not work for anybody because I didn't like the system of working for somebody. So I became self-employed. And the next time I was employed by somebody is when I became a minister of government.
Wow.
So the majority of my life, I worked in a number of business areas because I believe in self-employment. I believe I could have generated more for myself being an employer than being an employee. And so that was the path that I chose to go. You were saying about the first woman elected parliamentarian happens to be a cousin of mine from the same community. And she was elected in 1974 as the parliamentary representative for the community that I am from, or the constituency that I now represent, which is Castries Southeast constituency. Actually, one of the buildings in one of the government buildings on the waterfront in Castries is named after her, the Herald in Rock building.
Oh,
now,
wow.
she used Gajada, but when she married, she became Rock, but her original name would have been Gajada. So she would be first cousin with my mother, first or second cousin with my mother. So pretty close ties, family-wise. And so that is where the politics started in the community that I am from. So I am the second parliamentary representative from the community of Forestierre, which is a small community on the hillside of Castries. We've had most of our parliamentary representatives. We've had one other person who attempted to run of Indian origin but did not win, and that would have been a brother to Mrs. Heraldine Rock, who was the
So it would have been your cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
amazing. So it
yes.
seems to me that you came from, sorry, I was going to say, it seems to me that you came from the world of self-employment, of employing people, to saying, actually, how can I put my skills to the test and help my nation grow as well, which I think is a very warming thing to do. It shows the custodianship that you have. But then what was that moment like then when you actually represented your country as a minister? Because that's a huge task point. And then on top of that, you probably got one of the most important portfolios of any government that anybody could imagine. Is that a lot of pressure on your shoulders then, Guy? Or
it is, the demands are quite a bit. So let me speak briefly about my entry into the political arena. So we have a public transport sector in St. Lucia that is privately owned. So I headed the organization, the National Council on Public Transportation in St. Lucia for 12 years as the president, elected every 2 years. So I was elected for 6 consecutive terms as the president. So I had a national profile before I came into the political arena. So what we have as the present public transport system in St. Lucia is something that I worked very hard with a team of other persons to help set up, with very little government involvement, no government subsidy, nothing in relation to so public transport in St. Lucia is privately owned. And I know that sounds a bit, but government only regulates it, but all the buses are owned by private sector persons, individuals, and that is how they make their living for themselves and their family. So I was very instrumental in setting up that system in St. Lucia, along with the persons within the Ministry of Transport. And so I had traveled the length and breadth of St. Lucia on several occasions, setting up associations, organizations, groups, meeting with communities, finding out their needs in terms of transportation, addressing concerns, being regular on television talk shows and radio talk shows in doing this. So at the time, and I have supported both political parties in St. Lucia. We are basically a 2-party system in St. Lucia, and I've supported both political parties. So I've had the opportunity to evaluate the performance of both.
Because you represent your region, don't you? I think that's the thing, it's a important part. You're the voice of your community there. So you don't really look at the politics, but you look more so, what can I do to support my region to get the very best of what's possible, which is really interesting. Yeah.
Yes, so we have 2 political parties in St. Lucia. We have the St. Lucia Labour Party and the United Workers' Party. So during a period of time, I supported the St. Lucia Labour Party. And then I became very disappointed with their performance. So I just exited myself from the being involved in anything political. And then I was approached by the United Workers' Party, which is the party that I supported originally as a younger person growing up, and my parents, because as I indicated, Mrs. Rock, the first woman parliamentarian, was elected under the ticket of the United Workers' Party at the time. And my parents and the people in the community, up to a day like today, they are predominantly supporters of the United Workers' Party. So when I came in, I was approached by Sir John, who had retired from active politics. He had been Prime Minister for about 30 years. And he really built the nation. The country referred to him as the father of the nation. So he took us into independence, and then he formed his party in 1964 and won the elections until 1979. After independence, he lost the elections, and the new government lasted only 2.5 years out of a 5-year term, and we changed about 4 prime ministers during that period of time. And then Sir John came back in 1982, and his party remained in government until 1997. But he retired in 1996 and allowed somebody else to take over. And then he came back in 2006 at the age of about 82 and won back the elections.
And so was he a mentor of yours then, would you say?
Very much. In fact, he is the reason why I am in politics today, because when it took me almost a year to make a decision to enter the political arena. When I was approached to run the seat, I told him I have no interest in running for politics. I can give him all the support because I've always supported him. In fact, I stopped supporting his party when he changed when he stopped being the leader.
I was going to say, Guy, why do you do it? What is it that drives you to actually want to do this? Because it would have been just easy for you just to sit back and continue in the business world. Because obviously you've got this, I get it from my side. There's a humanistic drive from you to make a positive difference and a contribution. But maybe in your own words, why bother?
Okay, so here's my tagline on this. I said, why am I complaining about other people not doing well if I'm not going to try to do better than what they have done? And so when Sir John said to me, what caused me to enter the political arena is that I was complaining about what was happening and how the country was being governed. And I had expressed my feelings publicly about it. And then he said to me, look here, I'm 82 years, I'm coming into this political arena. I'm not doing it for myself. I have done my part. I'm doing it for younger people like you. And you are not going to help me. I tell him, but I'm willing to help you. He said, I'm not accepting the help you are giving me. The only help I'm accepting is that you have to run for the seat because you're the only one who can win the seat for me. And I need you to win the seat for me to form the government. And I said, why am I complaining about what other people are doing if I'm not going to try to do it better? And then as a praying person, when I finally decided, nobody in my family supported me going into the politics, if I must tell you. But I had that desire to do something for my country and to make it a better place. And I felt that if you are going to complain about what other people are doing and you're not going to do anything about it, then you should not complain. So I comforted myself by saying, okay, if I try and I don't win, then at least I can say to myself that I tried. And I entered the political arena, and every poll that was done up to 2 days before the election said that I had zero chance of winning the elections. and I won by over 370 votes. And that is quite a good number because of the size of the political, the number of persons voting. So people win by 40 votes and 50 votes and 60 votes and 100. So to have won by 300 plus votes was quite an achievement. A lot of people, even when they were calling the votes the night, the announcers could not understand that I had done so well and that was in 2006. So in 2006 to 2011, I served as the Minister for Communications, Works, Transport, and Public Utilities. My biggest challenge came in 2010 when we had Hurricane Thomas, and the country was devastated by over 32 inches of rain in less than 24 hours. And we had to rebuild this country and get it back in operation. And I was spearheading the ministry, and that is another story all by itself. In fact, I had some people from the Army Corps in the US who came to speak to me because they said, with all the resources in the US, they could not understand how a country with such limited resources could have reopened so quickly. Bridges that was washed away, we got repaired overnight.
And that was because of your work, because of something that you were overseeing.
Yes, I oversaw a lot of the work that was being done, and we had an excellent team of people. And if I tell you, the majority of equipment owners and contractors in St. Lucia are also of Indian origin in St. Lucia. A lot of them were farmers diversified very early into equipment and other forms of business.
How do you know? I wonder how many people that are listening to this, they kind of recognize St. Lucia for sandals and all these type of holiday resorts, but how many people realize the actual work that the Indian community or people of Indian origin have done towards making St. Lucia to where it is today? And it's such an extraordinary thing. Speaking as with your political hat, and what's your biggest frustration then in terms of politics in the Caribbean, or even what's your biggest challenge as a politician in St. Lucia at this moment in time? Because you're dealing with COVID, you're dealing with FACA that took place, the impacts that was there. What's it like?
So it's a challenge to govern, but my biggest challenge in the political arena has been that I'm the number one target of the opposition. It's been a very tough battle. I have been attacked from every angle by the opposition. My family, everything that pertains to me has been scrutinized. I mean, the previous. So let me give you the history so you can put it in perspective. I served between 2006 to 2011 as the minister I indicated. And then my party lost the elections in 2011, but I won my seat. And that was the first time in my community that somebody had won the seat and was in opposition. So that is the biggest swing seat in St. Lucia, where every time the government changes, that seat is with the winning government. So on that occasion, it was the first time that it found itself in opposition. Secondly, that was the first time somebody had won a time that we were in opposition. And then the third term between 2000, in the elections of 2016, I won and my government won, my party won and formed the government. That was the first time anybody had won the seat for 3 consecutive terms.
Wow.
Nobody before me had won.
So when you're saying you're being attacked by your opposition, is it you, or is it more so because your community has been a stronghold around you, they've obviously believed in you? Is that attack against the community then, as such, rather than just you?
Yes. So during the 5 years I was in opposition, my community suffered quite immensely because the then Prime Minister made a public statement that he would do whatever it takes to see to it that I do not make it back to the Parliament of St. Lucia.
But your community is, to put it in perspective, is predominantly, you've got a good mix. You've also got people of Indian origin that are there, and it's a community that's supported you because you support the entire echelons of community. So your former PM made it a... How much of that is actually based upon your ethnicity then? Or how much of it is based upon you as an individual?
I don't want to think that it is based on my ethnicity, although sometimes it appears that way, because on a few occasions, even on radio and television, and even in the Parliament, some derogatory statements have been made about me.
Such as what?
Like, as I said, they would refer to me in... so one time I was referred to as a poodle by the Prime Minister. Another time, another senator of the then government referred to me as a coolie boy. There was another instance where one of the chairpersons of the party, the St. Lucia Labour Party, on a radio talk show also made derogatory remarks referring to me as a coolie boy. And so I have faced in the political arena some attacks on my being of Indian origin. It's unfortunate, but that is not widespread in St. Lucia. And I believe that this has happened primarily because they've not been able to get through to me in any other way that they have attempted. So when the Prime Minister said he would do whatever it takes to see to it that I do not make it to the Parliament of St. Lucia. So I am a Seventh-day Adventist. So Saturday is the day that I attend church. And because of my religious beliefs, we do not do any other activities on what we call
Sabbath. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He ended up putting nomination day on a Sabbath, which is the Saturday, which is quite inappropriate because nomination day for you as a candidate can only be between Monday to Friday.
Absolutely.
So he indicated that he had made a mistake in the calculation of the days, and then it ended up on a Saturday. I never really believed that because I don't know that you can calculate and get it so wrong. And we appealed to them to ask them to put it after sunset on the Saturday evening, and they did not respond, so they kept it on the Saturday. And I said, well, I'm not going in to be nominated. And all of my colleagues were a bit disheartened, and I said, well, I'm going to stand true to God before I stand true to anything that man wants me to do, and that is my religious conviction and my belief, and I'm not going. So I said, let's substitute somebody else to run in my place. And I was told, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. So the only thing I could have done to avoid that was I had to be out of the country on the day, so I could be nominated in absentia. The leader of my party chartered a small plane and flew me over to St. Vincent so that I was out of the island, and my group went and nominated me in absentia, so that then I won by the biggest margin. I won this time by over 1,000 votes.
But don't you think, in a world where we place a great reliance on the integrity of politicians, that what took place against you is probably the lowest common denominator with why everyone is disenfranchised with politics? Because of that Yeah.
It was very it was a very bad move, to the point where when we went to Parliament, we changed the law so that that could never happen again in the history of St. Lucia.
So
Where
right now,
anyone
then you said that you're being.
discriminated.
I was going to say, sorry, Guy. You're saying right now, then you're being attacked by the opposition party.
I have been attacked for all my years in the politics. They've used resources. I mean, when the prime minister of a country says that he's going to do whatever it takes to see to it that I do not make it to the Parliament of St. Lucia. And I think that rallied greater support for me, because people felt that it was very unfair. In fact, a gentleman came up to me and he said, I did not intend on voting, but for the prime minister of the country to attack you in that manner, we will show him who is electing the persons in the parliament. And I'm going to go out and vote for you to see to it that you are in the Parliament of St. Lucia. And, so politics you always have the challenges in the political arena. But for a prime minister to say this and to use state resources in a manner to see to it that a person is not elected to the Parliament of St. Lucia is very unbecoming of our political landscape in St. Lucia. That's not the norm of politics. Beyond that, while they were in government, they commissioned an investigation by an international person of international repute. That's a gentleman by the name of Robert Lindquist, who is a forensic investigator of big criminal things or fraudulent things across the globe. And he was contracted to investigate me for my term in government. And it is very interesting that up to today, they never released the report.
But this is from the same party that called you a cully in a public platform.
On a public platform. Yes. And so this report was done, and we've literally had to threaten to take them to court to release the report. And I think this report is scheduled to be released very soon. Because they refuse to disclose the findings of the report. Now, I've never been concerned about the report, because I've said to people, you cannot find what is not there. It must be there for you to find it.
Which is your own, it's your own truth.
Yes, so I know what I did when I was in government, so I know I did nothing illegal, so there's nothing to worry about. So imagine an investigation is done about you, and you are the one having to ask to release the report of the investigation. And they've had this report for many years, and we are supposed to get this report. We had to write to the forensic investigator, and the forensic investigator was paid over $1 million for that investigation.
Wow, I shouldn't laugh, but I think the irony of the whole thing, Guy, I suppose it comes down to one simple question. It's, what does it mean to you, the identity of a St. Lucian? Because you're saying everything that's taken place, regardless of the opposition, seems to be against the moral structure of what you grew up with, saying this is what being a person of Indian origin, or even more so, this is what it means to be a St. Lucian. It's the honesty, the integrity, and also the ability to collaborate together. But in your own words, what does it mean, having a St. Lucian identity?
I am very proud to be St. Lucian. There's nothing I would trade for being a St. Lucian. I am happy with where I was born. I am happy with where I grew up, the conditions under which it taught me vital lessons. It was tough growing up, but it taught me vital lessons in my life. And then St. Lucia is one of the most wonderful places to live in the world. I can tell you, our people while we have the pitons and we have beautiful beaches and we have hiking trails and we have nice sailing down to the Grenadines, you have all of these things. What we get the greatest compliments for in St. Lucia is the friendliness and the genuineness of our people. We've been voted so many times #1 honeymoon. Just for this year, we are the #1 honeymoon destination. For 11 or 13 times, I think St. Lucia has been voted globally as the #1 honeymoon destination in the world. So and then we've ranked among, some of our hotels have ranked among the top hotels in the world. And what we get the greatest accolades for is the friendliness of our people. And our people are genuinely friendly. So what I've spoken about in the political arena is pure politics, not the general characteristics.
No, absolutely not. I remember going to Castries when you had, was it the White Night, and you have the fried conch, and you're there, and it's a beautiful element. And then you go surfing on one side through to the pitons, and unfortunately, my own disposition to physical exercise at that moment in time had a layabout when climbing up those pitons. But it is a beautiful country, and I think one thing that most people don't realize is that it's incredibly diverse. You've got this incredible community of people of Indian origin that not only call the country home, but they've had a huge impact into very foundations of where the country is headed to. You've got universities there now, I believe. You've got schools there. You've got, again, some of the biggest contractors, yourself, a minister with an incredible portfolio. I think if anything doesn't shout out the fact that it is a collaborative culture, despite what your opposition have done to you, which I think is a noble in the cause of politicalness, but also probably against the very fabric of what St. Lucia stands for, which is social custodianship for all. Apart from the politics society, it is a stunning country. And now you have a citizenship by investment program that is taking place there. So people can actually live there and be part of the community.
Very much. And I mean, anybody who visits St. Lucia will want to come back. I mean, I have visited a lot of places in the world. I've done quite a bit of travel because I am the governor for the Caribbean Development Bank for the government of St. Lucia. So I represent the country at the Caribbean Development Bank. Because of my portfolio as Economic Development Minister, I accompany the Prime Minister to most of our World Bank meetings and IMF meetings. So it is something where you get quite a bit of exposure to meet a lot of leaders across the globe and people who have a lot of influence in terms of what is happening globally. So I have had the opportunity to serve at that capacity and to be able to reach out, to be heavily involved in a lot of negotiations at the highest level. We have an amazing Prime Minister. He has a global outreach, and he's been doing quite a bit to get the SIDS, that's the Small Island Development States Association, going, because we are the most impacted by climate change, while we are the least contributors to global emissions and global warming. We are the ones who face the brunt of all of the ravages of the hurricanes and the rising sea levels and all of the other factors, the heat that we are seeing now that is unprecedented compared to other times. So we are trying to lead and play our part in what we are doing. But what we have done as a government, and what I'm proud of, is that we are focused on our own destiny. We are not leaving our destiny in the hands of other people to decide. So we take responsibility for what we have to do. I think we've been able to manage COVID at one time. Until the second wave of COVID, we were basically COVID-free for the majority part of the period. We got an outbreak, a small community spread, but that was quickly brought under control because we now have only about 50 plus active cases on island, and everybody is in isolation. So because we do contact tracing very well, because we are a small community, 170,000 population, you can connect everybody to, almost everybody knows everybody in the country. So it's been very easy to be able to do the contact tracing and to put people in isolation. So most of the cases we would come across are cases that are already in quarantine and have not allowed it to spread out of control. So it's been managed very well by the Department of Health.
But I would dare say though, Guy, it's knowing about the incredible work you've done, a lot of St. Lucia's success. And although you have a fantastic Prime Minister, I think it comes down to you as a cornerstone, because not only have you committed your life towards actually developing the country, but you've also helped develop every single echelon without any fear or favor. So for me, it's where would St. Lucia have been if Guy Joseph did not enter politics? That in itself is actually a really interesting question to ask her. I know you're going to be incredibly humble because I can see the smile there saying, no, Rajan, don't be silly. St. Lucia still would have been as fantastic as it is. But the reality is you've actually dedicated a lot of your life and your time towards helping the country. And I think for me, it's actually a privilege to have you in here, because it's about time that we fan the flames of positive discussion on the true champions of countries, rather than those that are almost on the back end.
It is a humble moment for me. I will tell you that quite a bit of people tell me similar to what you have said there, but I have learned to take praises in a very humble manner.
See, you're being humble. Guy, would you look? St. Lucia's.
My tagline for my campaign was humble and hardworking. So,
and you live up to that. Would you?
Yes.
What has to happen for St. Lucia to have its first person of Indian origin Prime Minister? I know that's not your intention at all. And you made that very clear that you're there just to serve the governments of the time to help your community get ahead. But surely, not from us, but from your own community, they must be waiting to see the contributions of the community on a larger scale.
Yes. I believe that what has to happen will happen in time. The persons who are best equipped to govern the country will present themselves. And if it has to be, I don't really look at it from the standpoint of whether you need to be Indian or African descent or European descent. It doesn't matter to me it's who is best placed to lead. And I believe we have the best leader at this point in time. I mean, if we go back to St. Vincent, Sir James Mitchell is of Indian origin, and he was Prime Minister of St. Vincent for a number of years.
Really? Wow.
Yes. In fact, I actually have his book. He sent me a personal copy. We have a very good rapport. Sir James was an amazing Prime Minister. He served during the time of my former Prime Minister, Sir John Compton. They served during the same era in the political arena. And he was Prime Minister of St. Vincent for a number of more than 2 or 3 terms. He was Prime Minister of St. Vincent. So
that is extraordinary. I think that's the thing. We don't really know about this remarkable contribution that the community have made as being in the country, as being St. Lucians or from St. Vincent, but just the fact that they've actually changed the course of history. What is your legacy, Guy? What will people, when they think of you in the future generations to come from the next 50 years, what is it that you want people to remember about what you stood for? And you've stood in the most remarkably weird, strange times in modern day history. You've had to deal with hurricanes, you've had to deal with COVID, you've had to deal with fabricated, if want for a better word, assassinations against your personality.
I believe that I stand for for truth and honesty in politics. One of the issues that I had when I entered into the political arena was not to allow the politics to change who I am, my manner of doing things. So I used to drive trucks before. I love driving trucks. You'd still see me driving a truck in the community. I still go on the field and play cricket with the fellas. I still stop by the bars and we play dominoes. I also enjoy playing dominoes. You would see me with my boots on my feet and my raincoat whenever there's a problem, because my community is very prone to flooding because I have a lot of hills and valleys. So I have landslides, and every hurricane season we have flooding. And the people of the community will tell you it could be midnight. The first person you will see in the community when there's flooding would be myself. I have always identified myself as part of the people. And while I do projects and I develop the community, I want my legacy to be that I was the people's representative. I worked for the people and I put them first and foremost. In fact, my wife tells me, so hurricanes affect only the constituency, not your home, because every time there's a hurricane, you leave me home and you go and see. But she's very understanding and very cooperative. She supports me very strongly. Every time I have to speak in Parliament, she comes and sits there. She's present in person, not just listening at home on television. So I think that my legacy is still being developed.
Absolutely.
In terms of what generally I am known in the political arena as the maybe the hardest hitting person in the Parliament. A lot of people look forward to listening to my presentations, and some people only listen to my presentations in the Parliament. Maybe one of these days when you have a chance, you can take a look at on the website.
Absolutely.
Some of the presentations that I have made, but I like to be humble about these things. It's who I am. I don't put up a show. I don't pretend. I am being me. Every time you see me doing something, that is me. I cannot adopt other people's styles. Nobody writes speeches for me. So my people know that. In fact, the last time I had to deliver a speech, asked, where are my speaking notes? They said, well, there are 3 people speaking before you. You listen to them and then you'll get your speaking notes from them. So generally speaking, whether on the political platform, in the Parliament, on a talk show, I run a radio talk show that I call Inside Castries Southeast on a station 93.1 Sky FM in St Lucia. That's every Monday night at 8 p.m. my time. And I speak to the people of my constituency and the people of the country in general. And it's a call-in program where people call in and express their concerns. So generally speaking, what I do is I put the people first. That is what my representation is all about. My secretary will tell you, and everybody will tell you, that I spend the whole day seeing people because I think people are the most important, and I stay in the night to do the office work and the paperwork. I stay back late, but nobody comes to my office and I say, I don't have time to see you. And I don't send the secretary outside if I'm in a meeting to say to the people, I cannot see you.
I hate to say, Guy, you are unfortunately an anomaly in the political conundrum that is the globe, because I think, one, you've obviously showcased that you do care, but it's not just you, it's the fact that your community around you that is incredibly diverse have voted you in consecutively over the years. But to hear that story in itself just represents, obviously, one, the greatness in this form of identity of St. Lucia, but also what Indianness means to you, because it is what you said at the beginning is hard work, doing what's right, not just for oneself, but one's country, and making sure that you can actually help everybody survive and get through these times. I think it's
Very,
it's fantastic.
and I think I will tell you in all fairness, because I'm the only person of Indian origin in the Parliament of St. Lucia, I set very high standards and expectations for myself, and I try my best to be able to get there.
Well, there's not much to be said from there. I think the beautiful thing that you would have seen about Guy is he doesn't try to be a politician. He has a nobility of the art of doing what's right, not just social custodianship for his own community, but actually for every single echelon of society, for the entire parts of St. Lucia. He really is a true gentleman to the cause. And like yourselves, I think we're all fascinated for the fact that you got this remarkable community of people of Indian origin who call the country home. Most people forget that the Caribbean is this incredible melting pot of cultures, food, cuisine, music, as well as these remarkable communities that we often don't really talk much about. Well, we're going to change that. So until next week, I really hope you enjoy this session. Stay safe. And if you like this, make sure you do share, follow and subscribe, because with your help, we get to continue building the world's greatest living encyclopedia of people just like us.